I noticed there's no sort of modulations and things like that, or is that something? How do you feel about sort of some of the modulations or chorus sounds with bass and things like that? I know it's probably less used with bass, but just how do you feel about some of those effects?
I don't necessarily mind them. I'm probably a bigger fan of chorus than any other type of modulation. But when you got two guitar players, because back before like 2018, Ryan didn't really play guitar live in 11 to 38. So I feel like before then there probably would have been more room for modulation effects. But now that we got two guitars going, like it's a bigger wall of sound that we're sending out. Um, and especially just doing a lot of 70s guitar rock type of stuff, like it doesn't really lend itself like a
Mm,
whole lot
mm.
to modulation type of stuff, because there's not a lot of stuff that's being held out or to create that swell. So like I've got like I've got an MXR over here, phase 100, but I haven't used that in at least 8 or 9 years.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Right. Well, look, thanks
And
very much.
actually, there is one other pedal that I don't have out because it's in my bag. Um, Wireless units. That's a big part of pedal
Yeah.
board on the road. And I actually used one that I found at NAMM a couple of years ago, and it's just this. This is my whole unit. Actually, this is the whole unit.
Oh yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the whole box, and then this is the unit.
Yeah. Which brand's that? Which?
This is a company called Stage Clix. They're out of the Netherlands, I believe.
Yeah.
And this unit is so damn good.
Yeah.
Um, it's like I was never like a big fan of like these modular type of units. Like I feel like they can break very easily,
Hmm.
and I don't like the idea of something like this just like flinging around on the bottom of an instrument.
Yeah.
Um, I got convinced pretty quickly that like this is definitely the way to go. Because I used an X2 from Line 6 before this,
Hmm.
and that had like the big battery pack. It was pretty cumbersome, especially like if you're doing a switch mid show, like if a string breaks or whatever the case may be, different tunings, for
Hmm.
example. Um, I had like I had a leather pack made for me that was like a holster that would go on my strap,
That's what I've
and
got.
yeah,
But yeah, when
and
when you change guitar, you have to loop everything out. It's a little bit more time consuming, and the fact of the matter, the benefit of those, you take your guitar off, plug it back in, and away, and off you go again, isn't it? It's a lot quicker.
yeah, so having something like this I can just pull out and then just put into the next bass, and especially having this adjustable arm like this,
Hmm.
it makes it really easy because like the Jaguar's got a top loading input jack like a jazz bass would, but then my P bass has bottom loading. So having this adjustable arm makes it easier,
Hmm.
especially when you're dealing with different forms of input jacks.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then also, there's no 9 volts anymore. I don't have to do that. It charges. I plug it in there, and it charges itself, like in the unit.
Yeah, I think I need to move on. I think I need to move on, get myself one of those, definitely. Um,
Yeah. So the company is called Stage Clix for anyone out there that wants to check it out. It's by far my favorite unit that I've ever been able to use.
yeah. Lovely. Well, look, thanks for that, Justin. I mean, within the sort of the pedals environment, is there anything that you think is missing in the for bass? I mean, I hear a lot of times from bass players saying that a lot of pedals that when they put the bass in through the pedals, a lot of the bottom end goes and things like that. So, what do you feel that pedal builders are maybe missing out a trick on?
I think that's definitely an issue. I've noticed that issue probably more with compression and overdrive than anything else. But I do think we've come a long way, especially since I started like putting pedal boards together like 10 years ago. Like the leaps and bounds companies have made and the technology that's come out since then, it's pretty impressive. I think having blend knobs on more pedals is pretty great. That would be nice. That would probably be the only thing I would say, is being able to have that blend knob to bring in some of your actual like dry unaffected signal.
Yeah, yeah. And you provide some fantastic work for the NAMM Foundation, which I understand is sort of education, musical education for children. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and how you got involved.
Yeah. So back in like 2013, they started doing these day of service events that would complement the actual NAMM convention. And that was something that they did because they do a lot of work in the advocacy realm, dealing with the language of different bills and stuff, to make sure that music is something that's not a privilege, but it's a right and something that every child should have access to, and it shouldn't be after hours. It should be part of your daily education. If kids can access a football, a kid should be able to access a piano just as easily. And unfortunately in America, it's never been that way, and that's a problem. So in 2013, because obviously NAMM's a very big thing that happens out here, they started actually helping Anaheim, and they would do these day of service events where you would show up at like 8 a.m. and you would give 2 hours of guitar lessons to a school in Anaheim, and then NAMM would donate money to the district so that they could do something with the money to help with their art funding. And so I did that I've been doing that ever since. So I'm like 7 years into this now. Obviously, this year was a bust because we didn't get a NAMM, so there was no working with the kids this year. But every other year, even 2020, right before the virus shut everything down, like we had NAMM and we had our service events. But around 2017, I was doing this for a couple of years. They asked me if I wanted to get involved further. I was like, yes. What does that include? They're like, well, that would mean going to the state capitol in Sacramento, and that would be going to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and sitting down with politicians and basically sharing your story of being a kid in your school music department and talking about how you tour and you play in a band now and how that translated. I was like, oh, yeah, I could definitely do that. And I've been doing that ever since. It's wild. It's weird. I never thought I'd be actively in politics. Obviously I vote, but that was pretty much like the extent of my interest in politics. I didn't really want to get involved a whole lot, just because it's any politics is messy. So I just didn't really have much of an interest in doing anything like that. But when they gave me that opportunity, like I had to take it. And to this day, that trip, I've only been to DC once. I've done the local Sacramento thing in California every year. But that year that we went to DC it was life changing. It was wild to be, like I was in Sacramento for my first time a week before I went to DC. So that was like, it was good to be able to get my feet wet in local politics at the state level before, shipping off to Capitol Hill. But I remember landing in Washington and, driving by everything. And then we had like our inaugural dinner that night. And then it was like, okay, you can either go to bed or we'll see you at the school tomorrow to teach. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm going to get an Uber. I'm going to go, walk the mall. I'm going to go to the Lincoln and the Washington Monument. And it was so weird because, it's something we do out here in America. There's, usually an educational field trip that you take to the East Coast, or it's at least an option for you to go take that trip. And, I took that trip when I was in 10th or 11th grade. And so it was weird to be back there again and be there for work in such an important thing. And actually at that time, the week we were there was when the federal budget was being proposed for the upcoming year. So it was really important that we were there when we were. Um, and it was just, it was wild. It was wild. And especially, you know, when certain things happened earlier this year, like I know that hallway. So it's weird to see, stuff like that now, like on the news, like, you know, when, even if it's just like they're interviewing someone because of whatever bill is being passed or is being under consideration for voting, and you know, you see the newscasters and they're in the hallways of the capitals. Like I know where that is now because I've been there, and that's a weird thought.
Yeah.
But it's really important work that we do. You know, it's also pretty easy being a Californian talking to California elected officials about this type of work, because so much of California's economy is tied to arts and entertainment. So for people like us, it's pretty easy to talk to them and for them to be like, oh, like, yeah, I know how important this is. Like my child is in like band class. So like we're pretty fortunate with the work we get to do and the elected officials we have. I know it's not that way for every state, but that's why we do this work is, you know, it's not necessarily for the Californians that already have a pretty decent handle on this. Obviously, everything can always be better, and that's what we're striving for. But there's other states that really need to get their act together and get better funding for their students. So that's what we do, and it's been great because outside of that, this relationship that I've been able to develop with Anaheim has me coming back. And you know, I go down there and, you know, we do career days or you know, just other days that we have, just where they want me to come down and talk to the students or be like a teacher's assistant of sorts to you know, work with their students on music. So it's fun. It's very humbling because these kids that are in elementary or, you know, even middle school at the latest that I've worked with, I haven't even worked with high schoolers. But these kids, they don't know who I am and they don't care. They just see someone that's teaching them music, and that's all that matters to them. So that's always really enjoyable too. You know, it's not like, you know, you're sitting at the merch table after a show and, you know, you're just talking to people and, you know, they're talking to you because they just saw you on stage. These kids, they don't know and they don't care. And there's something truly enjoyable about that, where it's literally just about the music and you just teach them, and you know, you get to see what talent some of these kids have. Like it's really incredible to see, you know, what some of these fourth and fifth graders that have now been able to learn music for a couple of years in school, like what they're capable of.
Well, you mentioned that you know, when you were young and listened to the Beatles, and that was life changing, and sort of like go to DC, and that was sort of life changing. I think what you're providing is clearly going to be life changing for some of these kids as well, and it is music. And you remember those points. I remember the first time I heard Eric Clapton, and that was my turning point for, you know, picking up the guitar. I remember it very well. And it was, in some small part, a life-changing experience for me. It does, but certainly when I was at school, contemporary music wasn't taught. It wasn't part of the curriculum. It was all traditional instruments and things like that. I wasn't interested as a kid in that sort of thing. But if somebody had have picked up a guitar and said, here's a guitar and this is Jimi Hendrix, I probably would have been interested at that stage. And you even, you know, so a lot of the contemporary artists and bands and the Beatles, if you look at their songwriting and how the chords are laid out and the melodies and everything, it is very, very, you know, very, very clever. And
that's something that, like, when I was starting out, like, I didn't really understand. I was like, I like the way this sounds, but you know, now that I'm older and I have a better understanding of music and theory and, you know, what goes into songwriting, like an even deeper appreciation I have of these bands that, you know, kind of got me into music and got me buying music.
Yeah.
Than I had when I was just, you know, surface level, like I like the way this sounds. It's like, okay, but why? And
Yeah.
now I can actually get into the whys and the hows and the whats.
Is the NAMM Foundation something that other people can get involved in, and how might they do it?
Unfortunately, the NAMM Foundation is really only available to NAMM members. So if any builders out there are part of NAMM, then you're absolutely able to take part in all the different advocacy avenues that the NAMM Foundation has. Outside of that, though, there is a group called Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation. It was started by uh, the composer of the movie, and that whole film was made in the 90s, and it's basically about all the same stuff that we're talking about today. It's, you know, the school having to let go their music teacher because they didn't have the funds to pay him anymore.
Right.
And they've been in the public light recently because that was Eddie Van Halen's favorite charity. And back in like 2016 or 17, I think he donated a bunch of his personal guitars to them.
Right.
And they've been, obviously, with his passing, there's been a lot of talk about them because Wolfie, his son's been doing a lot of stuff to carry on his dad's passion for that foundation. So they're accessible to anyone. They take donations. I don't think they're doing product donations anymore, but, you know, if, you know, you got a couple of spare bucks, they're an incredible foundation that does work for the entire country for music education and funding.